My wife gave me a $1 coupon and a cold pizza for my birthday, mocking my failed life and career in front of 50 guests, and left with her rich boss. She never knew I bought the company she worshipped. Today I walked into the boardroom to fire her lover. So there I was, standing in my own living room on my 38th birthday, holding a crumpled dollar-off coupon for Tony's Pizza like it was some kind of participation trophy for surviving another year of mediocrity. The thing is, I didn't even like Tony's Pizza. Their crust tastes like cardboard that got into a fight with a salt shaker and lost. But here I was, clutching this piece of paper like it was supposed to mean something profound. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Let me back up a second and paint you the full picture of this absolute dumpster fire of a celebration. My wife Clara, yeah, we'll get to her in a minute, had decided that what I really needed for my birthday was a party. Not just any party, mind you, but the kind of party where you invite 50 people who barely know you exist just so they can witness your complete and utter humiliation in high definition. We're talking neighbors I've waved to maybe twice, coworkers from my construction firm who probably couldn't pick me out of a lineup, and her entire precious crew from Silverline Advertising, the place where she spent more time than she did with our actual children. The house was packed tighter than a subway car during rush hour, and everyone was dressed like they were attending some kind of upscale networking event rather than a birthday party for a guy who genuinely just wanted to eat wings and watch basketball in his underwear. There were catered appetizers, those fancy little shrimp cocktails that cost about $12 per bite, champagne flowing like we just won the lottery, and a decoration budget that could have funded a small wedding. All of this for a man Clara regularly referred to as comfortably unmotivated during dinner parties. The peak of this spectacular evening came when Clara decided it was toast time. She clinked her champagne glass with one of those perfectly manicured fingernails, the one she got done every 2 weeks at that salon that charges more than my car payment, and the entire room went quiet. I should have known right then that nothing good was about to happen. In my experience, when a room full of people suddenly shuts up to listen to your spouse, you're either about to hear something incredibly sweet or something that'll make you want to fake your own death and move to Peru. Guess which category this fell into? Everyone, Clara said, her voice dripping with that fake warmth she used when she was about to deliver a punchline at someone else's expense. I want to raise a glass to my husband, Luke, the man who has taught us all that ambition is completely overrated. She paused for effect, letting that little grenade of a statement sink in while people nervously chuckled. He's proven that you can be perfectly content going absolutely nowhere in life. And honestly, that takes a special kind of talent. The room erupted. I'm talking full-on laughter, the kind that makes people double over and grab their stomachs. My mother-in-law, Patricia, a woman who already thought I was the worst thing to happen to her daughter since that perm she got in 1987, nearly choked on a shrimp. She actually had to be patted on the back by the guy standing next to her while tears streamed down her face. From laughter, not concern for my feelings, obviously. And then came the grand finale. Clara reached behind her back and pulled out an envelope like she was some kind of twisted game show host. She handed it to me with this smile that I'm pretty sure could have curdled milk and said, "Happy birthday, honey. I got you something that perfectly matches your level of ambition." I opened it. Inside was a coupon. Not a gift card. Mind you, a straight-up coupon that you'd cut out of the Sunday newspaper. One free slice. Tony's Pizza. It read, in bold red letters that somehow managed to feel both cheerful and insulting at the same time. The expiration date was in 2 weeks. The laughter got even louder. Someone in the back yelled, "Oh my God, that's perfect." And I heard at least 3 people taking photos with their phones, probably already composing the Instagram captions in their heads. Best birthday roast ever, or when your wife is savage AF, or whatever people say when they witness someone's dignity getting publicly demolished. Me? I smiled. That's what I do. I smile and nod, and let the sarcasm build up inside me like pressure in a shaken soda bottle. Because that's easier than acknowledging that the woman I've been married to for 13 years just compared my life's worth to a single slice of bottom-tier pizza in front of everyone we know. Sarcasm's a shield, right? And silence is criminally underrated in moments like these. I was still standing there, holding that coupon and maintaining my smile like some kind of birthday party hostage, when the front door opened and in walked Derek Harlow. Oh, Derek, where do I even start with this guy? Picture every obnoxious luxury car commercial you've ever seen. Add teeth so white they probably glow in the dark, and wrap it all up in a suit that costs more than most people's monthly rent. That's Derek Harlow, Clara's boss at Silverline Advertising. The man she talked about with the kind of reverence most people reserve for religious figures or Beyoncé. He rolled up in his shiny black Tesla, because of course he drives a Tesla. And the second he walked through that door, Clara's entire energy shifted. It was like watching someone flip a switch. Suddenly, she was all giggles and hair flips, touching his arm like they were in some kind of romantic comedy and not at her husband's birthday party. She barely even glanced back at me as she grabbed her purse and her coat. Luke, I'm so sorry, but Derek needs me to go over some urgent campaign details, she said, already halfway to the door. You understand, right? Work emergency. A work emergency. At 9:30 on a Saturday night. At my birthday party. Sure, Clara. That makes total sense. They left together, and I watched through the window as she climbed into his passenger seat, still laughing at something he'd said. The Tesla's taillights disappeared down our street, and when I turned back around, the room had gone from festive to funeral pretty damn quick. People were whispering, exchanging those knowing looks that told me I was probably the last person in our social circle to figure out what was actually going on. Someone started gathering up plates and cups, even though there was still an hour left on the party invitation. My buddy Jeff patted me on the shoulder with this pitying expression that made me want to punch him, and within 20 minutes, everyone had cleared out. I sat down on the couch, still holding that stupid coupon, surrounded by half-eaten appetizers and empty champagne glasses that cost more than my birthday present. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I looked down at that piece of paper. One free slice, Tony's Pizza, and actually started laughing. Not the fun kind of laughter, but that slightly unhinged kind that happens when you realize your life has become a punchline you never saw coming. You know what? I said out loud to nobody, because apparently I'd reached the talking to myself stage of the evening. This is the cheapest midlife crisis starter pack I've ever seen. But here's the thing Clara didn't know, couldn't have known, because she was too busy treating me like some kind of washed-up has-been who peaked in college and never recovered. That company she practically worshipped? Silverline Advertising, where she strutted around in her Prada heels like she owned the place, where Derek Harlow sat in his corner office making decisions that affected people's livelihoods. Yeah, about that. I owned it. Well, not yet, but I was about to. I didn't confront Clara that night. Honestly, what was I going to say? Hey, honey, noticed you bailed on my birthday party to go have a work emergency with your boss who looks like he stepped out of a cologne ad. Care to explain? Nah, that's amateur hour stuff. The kind of move guys make right before they end up sleeping on their buddy's couch and posting sad boy quotes on Facebook at 2 in the morning. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who orders a family-sized bucket of wings, cracks open a beer, and watches reruns of The Office while quietly plotting a corporate earthquake that would make the Richter scale jealous. See, here's what Clara never bothered to learn about me during our 13 years of marriage. I'm not actually mediocre. Shocking, I know. I'm a civil engineer turned investor, which sounds boring as hell when you say it out loud, but it basically means I spent the first half of my career building things and the second half figuring out how to buy the companies that build things. I like blueprints because they make sense. Everything has a purpose. Every line means something. And if you follow the plan correctly, stuff doesn't collapse and kill people. I hate drama, avoid confrontation like it's a communicable disease, and generally prefer to live my life in the quiet corners where nobody pays attention to me. But that night, something shifted. Sarcasm became my coping mechanism, which, let's be honest, it always was, but spreadsheets became my revenge diary. And let me tell you, there's something deeply satisfying about channeling your rage into Excel formulas and investment portfolios. It's like meditation for people with trust issues and a decent understanding of compound interest. The next morning, while Clara was still sleeping off whatever urgent campaign details she'd been reviewing with Derek until midnight, my phone rang. It was Tommy Briggs, my lawyer buddy who has the personality of a sitcom bartender and the legal knowledge of someone who actually went to class in law school. Tommy and I go way back. We're talking college roommates who survived on ramen and bad decisions. The kind of friendship where you can call each other at weird hours and skip all the pleasantries. Bro, Tommy said, not even bothering with hello. I heard your party turned into a roast. You good? Word travels fast in our suburb. I swear, we've got a neighborhood gossip network that could put CNN to shame. Oh yeah, I said, pouring myself coffee that tasted like liquid motivation. Nothing like public humiliation to speed up my character development. I'm basically the protagonist in a self-help book now. Tommy laughed, but it was that concerned kind of laugh that told me he was actually worried. For real though, man, what are you gonna do? Funny you should ask, I said. You free for lunch? We met at Donnelly's, this Irish pub downtown that serves burgers the size of your head and has the kind of dim lighting that makes you feel like whatever you're discussing is probably illegal even when it isn't. Tommy was already there when I arrived, nursing a Guinness and looking at me like I was about to either confess to murder or ask him to hide a body. I slid into the booth across from him and didn't waste time with small talk. I need you to handle some paperwork for me. Corporate acquisition stuff. His eyebrows shot up so fast they nearly left his face. Acquisition? Luke, you build parking garages and apartment complexes. What are you acquiring, a cement mixer? Silvaline Advertising, I said, watching his expression shift from confused to absolutely floored. Tommy set down his beer slowly, like he was worried any sudden movement might break whatever reality we were currently occupying. Claire's company? Dude, are you having a mental breakdown? Is this like when Jim bought that boat he couldn't afford after his divorce? This is nothing like Jim's boat, I said. Jim's boat was a cry for help. This is a carefully calculated business decision that just happens to involve crushing my wife's entire professional world. I laid it all out for him. For the past 8 months, basically since Clara started coming home later and later with increasingly creative excuses, I'd been buying up shares of Vertex Holdings, the parent company that owns Silvaline Advertising. Quietly, through shell companies and investment funds with boring names that nobody pays attention to. A few shares here, a small percentage there, nothing that would trigger any alarms or show up on anyone's radar. Just a patient guy slowly accumulating power while everyone assumed he was at home eating cold pizza and being mediocre. Why? Tommy asked, and I could see his lawyer brain trying to figure out if this was genius or completely insane. You bored or suicidal? Neither, I said, and I couldn't help but grin. Just patient, and maybe a little petty. Here's the thing about Silvaline Advertising that Clara either didn't know or didn't care about because she was too busy being impressed by Derek's Tesla and his corner office. The company was sinking faster than the Titanic, except without the romantic Leonardo DiCaprio subplot. They were drowning in debt, hemorrhaging clients, and held together by nothing but creative accounting and Derek's ability to bullshit his way through quarterly reports. The guy was juggling clients like bowling pins at a circus, and everyone was so distracted by his expensive suits and his motivational speeches about disrupting the industry that nobody noticed the company was basically a house of cards built on quicksand. I'd done my homework. While Clara was at late-night strategy sessions, I was reading financial reports and talking to industry analysts. Silvaline owed money to everyone. Vendors, contractors, even their own employees were getting paid late. Their biggest clients were quietly shopping for new agencies, and the advertising industry gossip mill was already writing their obituary. They just didn't know it yet. So what's the play? Tommy asked, leaning forward now, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Simple, I said. I keep buying until I have controlling interest. Then I walk into their boardroom, introduce myself as the new majority shareholder, and make some changes to the leadership structure. By changes, you mean? I mean Derek Harlow is about to find out what unemployment feels like, I said. And Claire is going to learn that the husband she's been mocking is actually the one signing her paychecks. Tommy sat back, processing this information while our burgers arrived. Finally, he started laughing, that deep, genuine laugh that made other people in the restaurant turn and look at us. What? I asked. Nothing, man. It's just, he wiped his eyes, still chuckling. This is the most elaborate screw you I've ever witnessed. You're not yelling, you're not throwing things, you're not posting cryptic quotes on social media. You're just quietly buying her entire company out from under her. It's beautiful. Psychotic, but beautiful. I prefer to think of it as poetic justice, I said, biting into my burger. Over the next hour, we hammered out the details. Tommy would handle all the legal paperwork, set up the necessary holding companies, and make sure every single document was airtight enough to survive any legal challenge. I'd continue acquiring shares through various channels, keeping everything just scattered enough that nobody would connect the dots until it was too late. One question, Tommy said as we were wrapping up. What are you going to call your holding company? Because Petty Revenge Incorporated probably won't look great on the incorporation papers. I'd already thought about this. Harborstone Ventures, I said. Sounds respectable, boring, exactly the kind of investment firm that nobody pays attention to until they own your ass. Harborstone Ventures, Tommy repeated, nodding appreciatively. I like it. Professional, forgettable, perfect for corporate espionage. It's not espionage if it's legal, I pointed out. True. It's just really, really satisfying revenge wrapped in paperwork and stock certificates. We clinked our glasses together. His Guinness, my Coke because I was driving and also because I needed to stay sharp for the financial maneuvering ahead. That night, I went home to find Clara already asleep, still wearing her work clothes like she'd crashed the second she walked through the door. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her sleep, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even disappointment anymore. Just this calm, cold determination that felt weirdly empowering. I went to my office, the spare bedroom that Clara called my man cave, with that condescending tone that made it sound like I was some kind of overgrown child playing with toys, and pulled up my investment portfolios. The numbers were looking good, really good. At my current acquisition rate, I'd have controlling interest in Vertex Holdings within 6 weeks. 2 months max if I wanted to be extra careful about it. I opened a new spreadsheet and titled it Operation Corner Office. Then I started mapping out every single step, every move, every potential obstacle. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't a significant motivator. This was about proving that the mediocre guy everyone underestimated was actually the smartest person in the room. He just hadn't bothered to speak up yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Just filed the LLC paperwork for Harborstone. You're officially a venture capitalist now. Try not to let the power go to your head. I texted back. Too late. Already planning my villain monologue. That's the spirit. Let me know when you need me to draft the termination papers for Mr. Perfect Teeth. I smiled at my phone, feeling better than I had in months. Maybe years. Mediocre men don't stay down. They just wait for the perfect moment to stand up and flip the entire table. Harborstone Ventures became official on a Tuesday, which felt appropriately boring for a company designed to fly completely under the radar while systematically dismantling my wife's professional life. The LLC paperwork came through clean. Tommy had set up all the proper channels. And just like that, I had a legitimate investment firm with a name that sounded like it belonged to some hedge fund manager who summers in the Hamptons and complains about capital gains taxes at cocktail parties. While Clara spent her nights working late, and yeah, I'm using air quotes so aggressive they could probably be seen from space. I spent mine reviewing acquisition reports, market analyses, and financial statements that read like horror novels if you knew what you were looking for. Turns out, Silverline Advertising wasn't just struggling. They were practically doing the financial equivalent of the Titanic's final moments, except nobody was playing violin music and Kate Winslet wasn't there to make it romantic. I didn't need fireworks for this. I didn't need dramatic confrontations or Jerry Springer-style showdowns in the driveway. I needed silence, patience, and legally binding documents with enough signatures to wallpaper a small bathroom. Revenge is a dish best served cold, right? Well, I was serving it at Arctic temperatures with a side of ironclad contracts and a garnish of corporate restructuring. The beautiful thing about being underestimated is that nobody watches you. Clara thought I was in my office balancing budgets for construction projects and maybe playing video games when I should be working. My coworkers thought I was just another middle management guy grinding away at spreadsheets. Even my own mother had asked me at Thanksgiving if I was doing okay career-wise, with this tone that suggested she thought I'd peaked at 25 and had been coasting ever since. None of them realized I'd been building an empire quieter than a library full of mimes. But the kids were starting to notice something was off. Kids always do. They've got this built-in bullshit detector that adults lose somewhere around the time they start caring about mortgage rates and whether their lawn is green enough. Mason, my 9-year-old who has the observational skills of a detective and the tact of a hand grenade, cornered me one Saturday morning while I was making pancakes. Clara was still asleep, probably exhausted from another late night of campaign development, or whatever euphemism she was using these days. Dad, Mason said, pouring enough syrup on his pancakes to violate several health codes. Why does Mom always wear perfume when she goes to finish reports? I flipped a pancake, buying myself a few seconds to figure out how to answer that without either lying to my kid or explaining that his mother was probably having an affair with her boss. There's no parenting book that covers this particular scenario, trust me. I checked. Because her boss's office has really bad Wi-Fi, I said, and the perfume helps her focus through the frustration. Mason looked at me like I'd just told him Santa Claus was actually a raccoon in a red suit. That doesn't make any sense. Welcome to adulthood, bud. Nothing makes sense. You want chocolate chips in the next batch? Zoe, my 12-year-old daughter who inherited exactly none of my ability to let things slide, rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't get stuck. You're being sarcastic again. You're welcome, I replied, sliding another pancake onto her plate. Dad, she said, using that serious tone that meant we were about to have a real talk whether I wanted to or not. Are you and Mom fighting? This was trickier. Zoe was old enough to understand nuance, young enough to still believe her parents might actually have their lives together. I sat down across from her with my own plate of pancakes that I suddenly wasn't hungry for. Not fighting, I said carefully. Just figuring some things out. That's adult speak for, yes, we're fighting but I don't want to admit it, Zoe translated. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. How about this, I said. Your mom and I are in a complicated place right now. But whatever happens, you two are fine. We're fine. This isn't about you guys. Mason, bless his completely unfiltered heart, piped up with, is Mom dating Derek? I nearly choked on my coffee. What? Derek? Her boss. The guy with the fancy car who looks like a toothpaste commercial. Mason said this like he was commenting on the weather, completely oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped in the middle of our kitchen. Where did you hear that? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. I didn't hear it. I just noticed. She acts weird around him. Like giggly weird. And she never giggles at your jokes anymore. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Or in this case, out of the mouth of a 9-year-old who apparently had better observational skills than I'd given him credit for. Tell you what, I said. Let's focus on these pancakes and let the adults handle the adult stuff. Deal. Deal. Mason agreed, already moving on to more important matters like whether he could have ice cream for lunch. Zoe, however, wasn't letting it go. She gave me this look, this knowing, concerned look that made her seem about 30 years older than she actually was. Dad, whatever you're planning, just don't do anything stupid, okay? When have I ever done anything stupid? I asked. You married Mom, she said, and then immediately looked horrified that she'd said it out loud. I should have been upset. I should have defended Clara. Should have done the whole parental unity thing where you never let the kids see the cracks in the foundation. Instead, I burst out laughing. Full on, bend over the kitchen counter laughing that made my sides hurt and tears streamed down my face. Oh my God, Dad. I'm sorry, Zoe said, mortified. I didn't mean. No, no. I managed between laughs. That was perfect. Terrible, but perfect. And for the record, marrying your mom gave me you too. So it wasn't completely stupid. Just mostly stupid. Even Zoe cracked a smile at that. The thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I'd moved past anger somewhere around the second week of my acquisition planning. Now I was just done. Done pretending everything was fine. Done being the punchline to Clara's jokes. Done playing the role of the mediocre husband who didn't have ambition or drive or whatever quality she thought I was lacking. That afternoon, while Clara was out getting her nails done, an appointment that apparently took 3 hours and involved going to a salon 40 minutes away because they're the only ones who get the color right. I wired another substantial investment into Harborstone Ventures. My accountant, Diane, called me immediately. Luke, she said, I need to make sure you know what you're doing here. These aren't small numbers we're playing with. I know exactly what I'm doing, I assured her. Because if this goes sideways, it won't. You seem awfully confident for someone who's basically betting the farm on a struggling advertising company. I'm not betting the farm, I corrected her. I'm buying the farm, burning it down, and building something better in its place. Metaphorically speaking. Diane was quiet for a moment. This is about Clara, isn't it? This is about business, I said, which was technically true even if it wasn't the whole truth. Right? Business. Well, for what it's worth, I always thought you could do better. Thanks, Diane. That's either really supportive or really insulting, and I'm choosing to take it as supportive. She laughed. Wires going through now. You're up to 32% ownership of Vertex Holdings. Few more moves like this, and you'll have controlling interest. That's the plan. By the end of the month, I'd consolidated shares through 4 different smaller entities. All legitimate, all properly documented, all completely legal and above board. Tommy had done his job perfectly, creating a paper trail that was technically transparent, but practically invisible unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. And nobody was looking, because who pays attention to the boring guy in the corner office of some construction firm? Harborstone Ventures now controlled 32% of Silverline's parent company. I had the power to influence major decisions, to vote on board matters, to basically stick my nose into every aspect of the business that Clara thought was her sacred professional territory. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Not even close. I wanted more than influence. I wanted control. I wanted to walk into that building, sit at the head of that conference table, and watch Derek Harlow's perfect teeth try to smile their way out of unemployment. I wanted Clara to realize that the man she'd been humiliating, the husband she'd dismissed as mediocre and unambitious, had quietly become the most powerful person in her professional universe. Patience is a virtue, they say. But patience plus careful planning plus legally protected corporate maneuvering? That's not virtue. That's art. I pulled up the acquisition timeline on my laptop, adjusted a few numbers, ran some scenarios. 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I wanted to be extra cautious about not triggering any SEC scrutiny. By midsummer, I'd have enough shares to do whatever I wanted with Silverline advertising. My phone buzzed. Clara, texting from the nail salon, running late. Dinner with the team tonight. Don't wait up. I texted back. No problem. Have fun. Then I opened my email and sent Tommy a message. Speed up the acquisition timeline. I'm done waiting. His response came back in 30 seconds. Hell yeah. Let's burn this thing down. Not burn it down exactly. More like carefully dismantle it, restructure it, and rebuild it into something that didn't include people who thought betrayal was an acceptable business strategy. I looked around my office, my man cave, that Clara had mocked during that birthday party. The same office where I'd been quietly orchestrating the biggest corporate takeover of my life. Mediocre, she'd called me. Unambitious. Content with going nowhere. She had no idea where I was actually going. But she was about to find out. Clara came home at midnight on a Thursday, which had become so routine that I'd actually started setting my watch by it. Thursdays were apparently presentation prep days at Silverline, which in normal people language meant the day Derek Harlow keeps my wife at the office until the bars close. She walked through the door smelling like expensive cologne, the kind that comes in bottles shaped like abstract art and costs more than a car payment, and had that slightly disheveled look that she probably thought was subtle, but was actually about as subtle as a marching band in a library. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, a cold cup of coffee next to me, and about 17 different browser tabs running various financial analyses. To anyone glancing over my shoulder, it looked like I was reviewing construction project budgets. In reality, I was coordinating the final stages of my hostile takeover with the precision of a military operation, except instead of tanks and missiles, I had shell companies and stock certificates. You're still up? Clara asked, kicking off her heels, Louboutins, because apparently regular expensive shoes weren't expensive enough. She said it with this tone of surprise, like she'd expected me to be tucked in bed by 9 o'clock with a glass of warm milk and my mediocrity tucked in beside me. Yeah, I said, not looking up from my screen. Just making small things that go nowhere. You know my specialty. The sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast, but Clara either didn't notice or didn't care. She opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of overpriced sparkling water that she bought from that boutique grocery store where a single apple costs $7, and leaned against the counter in that way that I'm pretty sure she practiced in the mirror. Long night. I asked, still typing. You have no idea, she sighed, taking a sip of her water like she'd just completed a triathlon instead of whatever she'd actually been doing for the past 6 hours. Derek had us reviewing the Morrison campaign until our eyes bled. That man is relentless about perfection. I bet he is, I muttered. What was that? Nothing. Just agreeing with you. Derek sounds like a real taskmaster. Really hands-on with his employees. If she caught the double meaning in that, she didn't show it. Instead, she launched into this whole monologue about campaign strategies and client expectations and synergistic brand alignment, using all those corporate buzzwords that sound impressive but mean absolutely nothing. I nodded in the right places, made the appropriate sounds, and continued reviewing the shareholder agreement that Tommy had sent over earlier that evening. Then she pivoted, because of course she did. Clara never could leave well enough alone. "You know," she said, and I could hear the judgment warming up in her voice like an engine revving. "You could have been making six figures if you'd taken that Houston job 3 years ago." Ah, yes, the Houston job. This again. For context, 3 years ago, I'd been offered a senior engineering position with a massive firm in Texas. Great money, corner office, all the corporate perks that supposedly matter. The catch? It would have meant uprooting our entire family, taking the kids away from their school and friends, and spending about 90% of my waking hours in an office building that looked like a glass prison designed by someone who hated natural light and human happiness. I turned it down because I actually gave a damn about our kids having a stable childhood. Clara had never forgiven me for it. "I could have," I said, finally looking up at her. "But then who would have been here to raise Zoe and Mason while you were at the office until midnight? We can't both be chasing corner offices. Someone had to actually parent." "That's not fair," she said, her face flushing. "I'm a great mother." "You're a part-time mother with a full-time career," I corrected. "Which is fine, by the way. But don't act like I sacrificed my career ambitions for fun. I did it so our kids wouldn't be raised by nannies and after-school programs." She opened her mouth to respond, probably to deliver some practice speech about work-life balance and women having it all, but I cut her off. "Besides," I said, returning my attention to my laptop, "I'm perfectly happy with my career trajectory. Making small things that go nowhere is very fulfilling. Really speaks to my soul." Clara stared at me for a long moment, and I could feel her trying to figure out if I was being serious or sarcastic. The beautiful thing about deploying sarcasm consistently is that eventually people stop being able to tell the difference. "Sometimes I don't understand you," she finally said. "The feeling is extremely mutual," I replied. She grabbed her water bottle and headed upstairs, her footsteps heavy with irritation. I heard the bedroom door close, not quite a slam, but close enough to make a point, and then the shower started running. Washing off the evidence, probably. Derek's cologne doesn't scrub itself off, after all. I went back to my laptop and pulled up the latest acquisition report. Tommy had been busy. Through a series of carefully orchestrated purchases spread across multiple investment vehicles, we'd managed to secure another 9% of Vertex Holdings stock in the past 2 weeks. That put us at 41% total ownership, well past the threshold for majority control. I had the power now. I could walk into Silverline tomorrow and start making executive decisions. But I wasn't going to do that, because what's the point of having power if you don't use it strategically? This wasn't about flexing corporate muscle. This was about timing, precision, and making sure that when I finally played my hand, it would be so devastating that Clara would need therapy just to process it. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Just got confirmation on the final batch of shares. You officially have controlling interest. When do you want to make your move?" I typed back, "Monday. Set up a board meeting. Tell them the new majority shareholder wants to discuss leadership restructuring." "You're evil." "I love it. I prefer strategically vindictive." Tomato, tomato. "Want me to draft Derek's termination papers?" "Already did it myself. Sent them to your email. Check for accuracy. On it. This is going to be legendary." I smiled at my phone, feeling that particular brand of satisfaction that comes from knowing you're about to completely upend someone's world and they have absolutely no idea it's coming. It's not quite happiness, more like vindication mixed with anticipation and seasoned with just enough pettiness to make it interesting. The shower upstairs turned off. I heard Clara moving around in the bathroom, probably going through her elaborate skincare routine that involved about 40 different products and took longer than most people's commutes. I used to find it endearing, all those little rituals and routines. Now it just seemed like more evidence of how much time and energy she invested in impressing other people while taking everything at home for granted. I closed my laptop and headed to the guest room, my unofficial bedroom for the past 2 months, ever since Clara had started complaining that my tossing and turning was disrupting her sleep. Which was bullshit. obviously, but I didn't fight it because honestly, sleeping in separate rooms made everything easier. I didn't have to pretend to be asleep when she came home reeking of affair, and she didn't have to come up with creative explanations for why she was showering at midnight. Before I went to bed, I pulled out that old pizza coupon from my desk drawer. The one Clara had given me at my birthday party. The one that was supposed to be this hilarious joke about my mediocrity. It was crumpled now, the expiration date long past, but I kept it anyway as a reminder. A reminder that she'd made a critical error in judgment. She'd assumed that because I didn't brag about my accomplishments or flaunt my ambitions, I didn't have any. She'd mistaken quiet confidence for weakness, strategic patience for complacency. She'd looked at a man who chose family over flashy career moves and somehow decided that meant he was less than. But here's what Clara never understood about me. I don't need to be the loudest person in the room. I don't need the corner office or the fancy car or the ego that requires constant feeding. I just need to be the smartest person in the room, and I need everyone else to underestimate me while I work. And holy hell, had she underestimated me. I looked at that pizza coupon one more time, then tucked it back in the drawer. Monday was going to be interesting. Monday was going to be the day that Clara realized her mediocre husband had been playing chess while she was playing checkers, and she was about to get checkmated so hard she'd need a diagram to understand what happened. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., plugged in my phone, and went to sleep with the kind of peaceful satisfaction that comes from knowing you've done everything right. Every document was filed correctly, every share purchase was legitimate, every legal protection was in place. Tommy had triple-checked everything, and I'd quadruple-checked his triple-checking. This wasn't revenge. Okay, it was definitely revenge. But it was also justice and business, and maybe a little bit of poetry. Clara wanted to humiliate me in front of 50 people? Fine. I was about to humiliate her in front of her entire company, her boss, and everyone she'd ever tried to impress with her corporate ladder climbing. The difference was, my humiliation came with paperwork, legal standing, and the backing of a 41% controlling interest in her employer. Let's see her make a sarcastic toast about that. Upstairs, I heard Clara finally get into bed. The house settled into silence. That particular kind of quiet that happens when two people are living in the same space but existing in completely different universes. Monday couldn't come fast enough, but I could wait. After all, patience was my specialty. That and making small things that go nowhere, like hostile takeovers disguised as investment portfolios. I smiled in the dark and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of boardrooms and shocked faces and the look on Derek Harlow's perfectly symmetrical face when he realized his Tesla was about to get repossessed because he'd just been fired by the husband of the woman he was sleeping with. Yeah, Monday was going to be real interesting. Monday morning arrived like Christmas morning, except instead of presents under a tree, I was about to unwrap a hostile takeover in front of an audience of people who thought I was nobody. I woke up at 5:30, earlier than my alarm, with the kind of energy that usually requires 3 cups of coffee and a motivational speech from a YouTube life coach. But I didn't need coffee or motivation. I had spite, legal documentation, and a perfectly tailored navy suit that I'd bought specifically for this occasion. The suit was important. Clara had spent years seeing me in construction site casual, jeans, work boots, flannel shirts that had seen better days. Even when I dressed up for dinners or parties, I always went for comfortable over impressive, function over flash. But today I was going full corporate shark, the kind of look that says, I have lawyers on speed dial, and I'm not afraid to use them. I showered, shaved with more precision than a surgeon, and spent an embarrassing amount of time on my hair until it looked professionally styled instead of dad who gave up on grooming in 2019. When I came downstairs, Zoe did a literal double take from her cereal bowl. Whoa, she said, spoon frozen halfway to her mouth. Dad, why do you look like you're about to foreclose on someone's house? Business meeting, I said, pouring myself coffee. You never dress like that for business meetings, she pointed out, because apparently my daughter moonlights as a detective when she's not busy being 12. This one's special. Mason looked up from his iPad. Are you going to fire someone? Maybe, I said, and it wasn't even a lie. Clara appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in one of her power suits, a burgundy number that probably cost more than our grocery budget for the month. She froze when she saw me, her eyes doing this weird scanning thing like she was looking at a stranger who'd somehow infiltrated her kitchen. "What's with the outfit?" she asked, and I detected just the tiniest hint of suspicion in her voice. "Client meeting," I lied smoothly. "Big project proposal. Figured I should look the part." She nodded slowly, still looking at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. "Well, you clean up nice. Maybe you should dress like that more often." "Maybe I will," I said, grabbing my keys and my briefcase. An actual leather briefcase that I'd pulled out of storage, the one I'd gotten as a graduation gift and hadn't used in years. "Have a good day at work, Clara." "You too," she said. But she was still staring at me with this expression that was half confusion, half something else I couldn't quite identify. I kissed both kids on the head, gave Clara a wave that was just the right amount of casual, and headed out to my car. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, my heart rate was calm, and I felt more focused than I had in years. This was it. This was the moment when everything changed. The drive to Silverline's headquarters took 25 minutes through morning traffic that I barely noticed. I spent the whole ride running through my presentation in my head, checking and rechecking that every document was loaded on my tablet, every figure was accurate, every legal statement was airtight. Tommy had texted me at 6 a.m. "All systems go. I'll be on standby if you need me. Go get Tiger." Silverline Advertising occupied floors 12 through 15 of a glass building downtown that looked like every other corporate office building in America. All modern architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows designed to make you feel simultaneously important and insignificant. I'd been here exactly once before, at Clara's company Christmas party 2 years ago, where I'd spent 3 hours making small talk with people who kept forgetting my name and asking what I did for a living with this tone that suggested they expected me to say professional couch warmer. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. A young woman in her 20s sat behind it, typing away on her computer with the kind of intense focus that suggested she was either doing something very important or playing online Scrabble. I walked up to the desk, briefcase in hand, channeling every ounce of quiet confidence I'd been storing up for the past 3 months. "Good morning," I said. "I have a meeting with the board of directors." She looked up at me with that polite but slightly dismissive expression that receptionists perfect over years of dealing with people who think they're more important than they actually are. "Name: Luke Hayes, from Harborstone Ventures." I watched as she typed my name into her computer, and then her eyes went just a little bit wider. Whatever she was seeing on her screen had clearly upgraded my status from random dude to person we should probably pay attention to. "Of course, Mr. Hayes," she said, her entire demeanor shifting into professional overdrive. "Let me call up to the executive floor and let them know you're here." She picked up her desk phone, spoke quietly into it for a moment, and then hung up with this expression that suggested she'd just been told something very interesting. "Someone will be right down to escort you up," she said. "Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee? Water? I'm good, thanks." I stood there in the lobby, watching employees stream through on their way to the elevators, none of them paying any attention to me. Why would they? I was just another guy in a suit, probably here to pitch some boring B2B service that nobody actually wanted. They had no idea that the boring guy by the reception desk was about to become their new boss. The elevator dinged, and out stepped a woman in her 40s wearing a pantsuit that screamed executive assistant who has seen some things. She approached me with an outstretched hand and a smile that was professional but wary. "Mr. Hayes? I'm Jennifer, executive assistant to the board chairman. If you'll follow me." We rode the elevator up to the 15th floor in silence. Jennifer kept glancing at me like she was trying to figure out what kind of trouble I was about to cause, but she was too professional to actually ask. The elevator music was playing some instrumental version of a song I vaguely recognized, and I used the time to do one final mental check of my game plan. Step 1. Enter the boardroom like I owned the place. Because technically, I kind of did. Step 2. Present my credentials and ownership stake with maximum professional courtesy and minimum gloating. Save the gloating for later. Step 3. Watch Derek Harlow's face when he realized his world was about to collapse. This was the step I was most looking forward to. The elevator doors opened onto a floor that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd watched too many episodes of Suits and thought that's what real corporate offices looked like. Everything was glass and steel and aggressive modernity, with motivational posters on the walls that said things like innovate and disrupt in fonts that probably cost more than my first car. Jennifer led me down a hallway to a set of double doors that definitely belonged to the main boardroom. Through the glass panels, I could see people already gathered around a massive conference table. About a dozen people in various states of corporate dress, all looking vaguely confused about why they'd been called to an emergency meeting on a Monday morning. And there, at the head of the table, sat Derek Harlow in all his insufferable glory. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, probably a perfect trust fund somewhere funding his perfect life. He was leaning back in his chair with that casual confidence that comes from never having been told no in your entire life, chatting with the person next to him like he didn't have a care in the world. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Jennifer opened the door and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Luke Hayes from Harborstone Ventures." I walked into that boardroom like I was walking onto a stage, and every single head turned to look at me. I watched the recognition ripple through the room. A few people who'd been at my birthday party suddenly realizing why I looked familiar, others clearly trying to figure out who I was and why I was there. Derek's smile faltered for just a second. He'd seen me at Clara's party, had probably heard her talk about her mediocre husband, but there was this moment of cognitive dissonance where his brain tried to reconcile loser who got a pizza coupon for his birthday with guy in an expensive suit walking into our boardroom. The board chairman, an older gentleman named Richard something or other who I'd researched extensively, stood up and extended his hand. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for joining us. I understand you have some important information to share." "I do," I said, shaking his hand with just the right amount of firmness. "Thank you for accommodating this meeting on short notice." I walked around to the opposite end of the table from Derek, set down my briefcase, and pulled out my tablet. The room was dead silent except for the awkward shuffling of people trying to look casual while clearly being extremely curious about what was about to happen. I connected my tablet to the room's presentation screen and pulled up the first slide. It was simple, just the Harborstone Ventures logo and one sentence: ownership structure and future direction. "I'll keep this brief," I said, looking around the room and making eye contact with each person individually. "My name is Luke Hayes, and I'm the managing partner of Harborstone Ventures. Over the past 8 months, my firm has been quietly acquiring shares of Vertex Holdings, the parent company of Silverline Advertising." I clicked to the next slide, which showed a detailed breakdown of every share purchase, every transaction, every carefully orchestrated acquisition. "As of this morning," I continued, "Harborstone Ventures controls 41% of Vertex Holdings, making us the majority shareholder of this company." The room erupted in whispers. Derek's perfect smile disappeared completely, replaced by an expression that looked like someone had just told him Santa Claus wasn't real and also he was being audited by the IRS. Richard leaned forward in his chair. "Mr. Hayes, this is unexpected. We weren't aware that anyone was consolidating shares." "That was intentional," I said. "I prefer to work quietly." I clicked to the next slide, which outlined Silverline's current financial situation in painful detail. The mounting debts, the hemorrhaging clients, the creative accounting that had been hiding how bad things really were. "Silverline is in trouble," I said flatly. "Has been for at least a year. The current leadership has been focusing on flash over substance, spending money on appearances while the actual business crumbles. That ends today." Derek finally found his voice. "Now wait just a minute. Mr. Harlow." I interrupted, and the room went silent again. "We'll get to you in a moment." I pulled out the file I'd been preparing for weeks and dropped it on the table with a satisfying thud. "This is a comprehensive restructuring plan," I said. "New financial controls, revised client strategies, and most importantly, new leadership." I looked directly at Derek, whose face had gone from tan to pale in record time. Effective immediately, Derek Harlow is terminated as CEO of Silverline Advertising. Severance package details are in Section 7. The drive home from Silverline felt like floating. Not the peaceful, meditation app kind of floating, but the "I just dropped a nuclear bomb in a corporate boardroom and lived to tell the tale" kind of floating. My hands were steady on the wheel, my heart rate was surprisingly calm, and I couldn't stop replaying the look on Derek Harlow's face when I'd handed him his termination papers. The man had gone through approximately 17 different expressions in the span of 30 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, panic, and finally this hollow acceptance that comes from realizing you've been completely and utterly outmaneuvered. The board meeting had lasted another 45 minutes after Derek's termination. I'd walked them through the restructuring plan, answered their questions with the kind of detailed knowledge that made it clear I'd been doing my homework while they'd been coasting on Derek's motivational speeches and expensive lunches. By the time I left, I had their tentative support, a new interim CEO lined up, a woman named Patricia Chun who actually knew what she was doing, and a plan to stop the financial bleeding before Silverline became just another cautionary tale in the advertising industry. But the real show was about to start. I pulled into our driveway at 3:30 in the afternoon, which was unusual for me. Normally, I didn't get home until at least 5, sometimes 6 if there was a site inspection or a meeting that ran long. The garage door rumbled open, and I could already see Clara's car in her spot, which meant she'd somehow beaten me home. That was interesting. The Silverline rumor mill must have been working at light speed. I walked into the house through the garage door, loosening my tie, the same tie I'd worn like armor into that boardroom, and found Clara pacing in the kitchen like a caged tiger. She was still wearing her work clothes, but her jacket was off and her hair was coming out of its usually perfect bun. Her phone was clutched in one hand, and she was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It was somewhere between rage and complete disbelief, with a healthy dose of panic thrown in for flavor. "What did you do, Luke?" she snapped before I'd even set down my briefcase. "What the hell did you do?" I walked past her calmly, set my briefcase on the counter, and opened the fridge to grab a bottle of water. "I'm going to need you to be more specific, Clara. I did a lot of things today. I had breakfast, I drove to work, I attended a board meeting, I fired your boss." "You can't just fire Derek," she exploded, her voice hitting that pitch that usually made the dog next door start barking. "You don't have the authority to." "Actually," I interrupted, taking a long sip of water just to make her wait, "I do. I have 41% controlling interest in Vertex Holdings, which owns Silverline Advertising, which employed Derek Harlow." Past tense. Employed. Clara's face went through several different shades of red, settling on something that matched her burgundy suit. "You're lying. There's no way you." She was stammering, which was new. Clara never stammered. Clara was the queen of perfectly rehearsed comebacks and cutting observations. Watching her struggle for words was like watching a computer crash in real time. "Check the SEC filings," I said, channeling the same energy I'd used in the boardroom. "Or call Derek." "Oh wait, you can't do that anymore because he's not your boss. He's not anyone's boss. He's just a guy with great teeth and a Tesla payment he probably can't afford now that he's unemployed." "This is insane," Clara said, but her voice was losing some of its conviction. She was starting to realize that I wasn't joking, wasn't bluffing, wasn't having some kind of bizarre mental breakdown. This was real. "You blindsided him in front of the entire board." "Yep," I said, popping the P for emphasis. "Turns out, that's what happens when you spend months sleeping with the wife of the guy who's quietly buying your company. Pro tip for the future. Maybe do a background check on the husbands before you start an affair with their wives." Clara froze, just completely stopped moving, like someone had hit pause on a remote control. "I'm not. Derek and I aren't." "Oh, so you two still talk?" I said, mimicking her defensive tone. "How's the company carpool going?" "Wait, that's not going to be an issue anymore, is it? Since you no longer work for the same company." "Silver lining." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish trying to figure out how to breathe on land. "You're being ridiculous. Derek and I have a professional relationship." I corrected. "Had a professional relationship. Now you have no relationship, because he's going to be way too busy updating his LinkedIn profile and explaining to his wife why he got fired for cause." "For cause?" Clara's voice went up another octave. "What cause?" "Misappropriation of company resources, conducting personal business on company time, creating a hostile work environment through inappropriate relationships with subordinates." Should I keep going? Because the documentation is very thorough. Tommy's a great lawyer. You'd like him if you ever bothered to pay attention when I talk about my friends. Clara stumbled backward until she hit the kitchen island, grabbing onto it like it was the only solid thing left in her universe. "You ruined everything," she said. and I couldn't tell if she was talking to me or to herself. "No, Clara," I said, setting down my water bottle and looking at her directly for the first time since I'd walked in. "I rebuilt what you tried to destroy. You mocked my life, my career, my ambitions in front of 50 people at my own birthday party. You handed me a dollar off pizza coupon and told everyone I was proof that ambition was overrated. So I bought your world. I literally purchased the thing you cared about most and restructured it. You're vindictive," she spat out, finding her anger again. "You're cruel and vindictive, and I'm petty," I agreed. "Extremely petty. But I'm also right. And legal. And the new majority shareholder of the company where you've spent the last 3 years telling me how much more important your career was than anything happening at home." She tried to speak, but I kept going because honestly, I'd been holding this in for months, and now that the dam had broken, there was no stopping it. "Here's the good news," I said, my voice dripping with more sarcasm than a teenage eye roll. "You're still technically employed at Silverline. For now. Patricia Chun is the new interim CEO, and she's actually competent, so maybe you'll learn something. But I'd start polishing up that resume if I were you, because HR is going to be doing a very thorough review of everyone who was close to Derek's. Let's call it his management style." "You can't do this," Clara said, but it sounded hollow. She knew I already had. I did, and honestly, it felt great. Best Monday I've had in years. Clara's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down at it, and I watched her face go even paler as she read whatever message had just come through. Probably someone from the office, sharing the gossip, asking if she knew what was happening, wondering how the hell Luke Hayes, mediocre, unambitious Luke Hayes, had managed to orchestrate a corporate takeover without anyone noticing. "Everyone's asking what happened," she said quietly, still staring at her phone. "Tell them the truth," I suggested. "Your husband got promoted." "Promoted to what?" "Owner." The word hung in the air between us like smoke. Clara looked up from her phone, and for the first time since I'd known her. Since we'd met in college, since we'd gotten married, since we'd had kids and bought this house and built this life together. She looked at me like she had no idea who I was. "I underestimated you," she finally said. "Yeah," I agreed. "You really, really did. Kind of your whole thing, actually. Underestimating me while overestimating everyone else. Derek with his Tesla and his TED Talks about disruption. Your advertising friends with their expensive brunches and their performative creativity. You thought all of that was impressive, was valuable, was worth more than what we had here. I didn't. You did," I said firmly. "You absolutely did. And now you get to live with the consequences of betting on the wrong horse. Or in this case, the wrong guy with a corporate credit card and a talent for schmoozing clients while his company hemorrhaged money." Clara's phone buzzed again. And again. The messages were probably piling up, concerned colleagues, confused friends, maybe even Derek himself trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to his perfectly curated life. "What happens now?" she asked, and she sounded tired. Not angry anymore, just exhausted. "Now." I grabbed my briefcase and headed toward my office. "Now you figure out what your life looks like when you're not defining yourself by Derek Harlow's approval rating. I'm going to make some calls, have dinner with the kids, and maybe order a pizza. A whole pizza, not just one slice. Because I can afford it, Clara. I could always afford it. I just didn't need to prove it to everyone like you did." I walked away, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her phone buzzing and her world crumbling around her designer heels. From my office, I heard her make a phone call. Her voice was low, urgent, probably talking to one of her work friends or maybe her sister. I didn't care enough to listen. Instead, I pulled up my email and found the message from Patricia Chun, the new interim CEO. "Mr. Hayes," it read, "thank you for your confidence in my leadership. I've already begun reviewing the organizational structure and financial records. We should schedule a meeting later this week to discuss the path forward. Also, for what it's worth, that was the most professionally executed corporate takeover I've seen in 20 years. Well done." I smiled and typed back a response confirming our meeting. My phone rang. "Tommy." "Dude," he said the second I answered. "You're all over LinkedIn. Mystery investor ousts Silverline CEO. Corporate shakeup rocks advertising world. This is insane. How do you feel?" "Like I just won a game of chess that my opponent didn't know we were playing," I said. "And Clara?" "Currently having an existential crisis in the kitchen. I give it 3 days before she moves out." "Damn. You okay?" I'm better than okay, Tommy. I'm finally done pretending. We talked for a few more minutes about the legal implications, the next steps, the inevitable fallout. When I hung up, I heard the front door open and close. Through my office window, I watched Clara get into her car and drive away, probably heading to her sister's house or some friend's place where she could vent about how her husband had betrayed her by checks notes being successful without her permission. The house was quiet, peaceful even. I leaned back in my office chair and looked at that pizza coupon I'd framed on the wall. My reminder, my motivation, my trophy. Thanks for the inspiration, Clara, I said to the empty room. Couldn't have done it without you. The next morning, Silverline advertising was all over the business news like a bad rash that nobody wanted to talk about, but everybody was secretly fascinated by. I woke up to 17 text messages, 12 missed calls, and my phone's news app practically having a seizure with notifications. CEO ousted amid scandal. Read one headline from the Business Chronicle. Anonymous shareholder forces leadership change at prominent ad firm. Proclaimed another. My personal favorite was from some tech blog that didn't usually cover advertising at all. Man buys wife's company. Fires her boss in power move for the ages. Okay, so maybe they didn't have all the details exactly right, but the spirit of the thing was pretty accurate. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through the carnage on my tablet, and eating a bowl of cereal that tasted significantly better now that I'd destroyed my wife's affair partner's career, when Clara came stomping into the living room. She'd clearly spent the night at her sister's place. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday and had that particular look that comes from sleeping on someone's pull-out couch and having an existential crisis at the same time. She was holding her laptop like it was a weapon, screen facing out toward me, displaying what looked like a LinkedIn feed, having a complete meltdown. "Everyone's asking what happened," she shouted, apparently having decided that our new communication style was going to be volume and panic. "My entire network is blowing up with questions, and I don't know what to tell them because my husband just committed corporate warfare without giving me a heads up." I took another bite of cereal, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed before responding. "Tell them the truth," I suggested. "Your husband got promoted." "Promoted to what, exactly?" She slammed the laptop down on the table hard enough to make my coffee mug jump. "Villain? Corporate raider? The guy who torpedoed my entire career because he was feeling insecure." "Owner," I corrected calmly. "Majority shareholder. The person who's going to save Silverline from the financial disaster that Derek was steering it toward. You know, the company you claim to care so much about? I'm actually helping it. Unlike Derek, who was basically driving the Titanic toward the iceberg while giving inspirational speeches about innovation." Clara's phone started ringing. She looked at the screen, declined the call, and then it immediately started ringing again. "This is Ashley from HR. She's called me 6 times this morning." "You should probably answer that," I said. "HR calls are generally not the kind you want to ignore." She glared at me, but answered the phone, putting it on speaker because apparently we were doing everything dramatically now. "Hello, Clara." "Oh my God," finally, came Ashley's voice, sounding like she'd been mainlining espresso and anxiety. "What is happening?" "Derek's office is being packed up. There's a new CEO none of us have ever heard of, and the entire executive floor is in complete chaos." "Someone said your husband orchestrated all of this?" "Luke, the guy from the Christmas party who told that story about the cement mixer?" I waved from across the table. "That's me." "Great memory, Ashley." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Luke is there? On this call? Right now?" "Hi, Ashley," I said cheerfully. "Yes, I orchestrated all of this. Well, me and my lawyers, and about 8 months of careful financial planning. How's your morning going?" What? Clara, what is happening?" Ashley sounded like her entire understanding of reality was crumbling, which was fair because it kind of was. Clara closed her eyes and took a deep breath that looked like it was supposed to be calming, but wasn't really working. "My husband apparently spent the last several months buying up shares of Vertex Holdings and now controls Silverline." "But why would he?" Ashley stopped mid-sentence, and I could practically hear her brain connecting the dots. "Oh, oh no. Clara, did Derek, were you and Derek?" "We need to have a conversation about my employment status," Clara interrupted quickly, which was a very smooth way of not answering that question. "Can I come in today?" "Sure, yes, come in. Patricia wants to meet with everyone from Derek's immediate team anyway. Come in at 10. "Clara, Seriously, what is going to happen? I have no idea, Clara said honestly, looking at me with an expression that was half anger, half pleading. I genuinely have no idea. She hung up and sat down across from me, her laptop still open and displaying the social media carnage. Her LinkedIn had about 90 notifications, her email was probably a disaster, and her perfectly curated professional image was currently being dissected by everyone she'd ever worked with. "Are you happy now?" she asked quietly. "Is this what you wanted?" "What I wanted," I said, setting down my spoon and looking at her directly, "was a wife who didn't humiliate me at my own birthday party and then leave with her boss. What I wanted was a partner who valued our family as much as she valued her career. What I wanted was basic respect. But since I couldn't have any of those things, yes, this is a pretty acceptable consolation prize." "I never meant to," she started, but I cut her off. "Yes, you did. You absolutely meant to. That birthday party wasn't an accident or a joke that went too far. You planned that humiliation. You invited everyone specifically so they could watch you put me in my place. You handed me that pizza coupon with a smile on your face and Derek Harlow waiting outside in his Tesla. So don't sit here now and pretend this was all some misunderstanding." My phone rang. "Tommy." I answered it on speaker because apparently that's just what we were doing now. Having all our conversations publicly like we were living in some kind of reality show. "Bro," Tommy said, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "You made LinkedIn history. There's literally a trending topic about mysterious corporate takeovers, and you're Exhibit A. I've had 3 different reporters call my office asking for comments. This is insane." "Just another Tuesday," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "Revenge served cold, like my pizza." Tommy's laughter echoed through the kitchen. That's the tagline right there. Revenge served cold. How one man bought his wife's company after she gave him a pizza coupon. I'd read that book. I'd write it, but I'm too busy restructuring an advertising firm, I said. Clara was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're joking about this? You just destroyed multiple careers and you're making jokes with your lawyer." "Multiple careers?" I raised an eyebrow. "I fired one guy who deserved it and put someone competent in charge. Everyone else's jobs are safe, probably safer than they were under Derek's leadership since we're actually going to stop hemorrhaging money. Your job is still intact, Clara. For now. That's more than I owed you after the pizza coupon incident." Tommy was still on the line. "Oh man, the pizza coupon. That really was the catalyst for all of this, wasn't it? $1 off at Tony's Pizza. The butterfly effect that destroyed a CEO." "It really was," I agreed. Never underestimate the motivational power of public humiliation. "I gotta go," Tommy said, still chuckling. "I have actual work to do, unlike you who apparently just buys companies for fun now. Call me later. And Clara, if you're listening, your husband is kind of a genius. Just saying." He hung up. Clara and I sat in silence for a moment, the only sound being the notifications continuing to ping on both of our devices. The news cycle wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was picking up speed. Some business podcast was already requesting interviews. A few industry blogs wanted quotes. And apparently someone had leaked some details about Derek's spending habits to a reporter who was now digging into Silverline's financial records. "This is a nightmare," Clara said quietly. "For you and Derek, maybe," I said. "For Silverline's actual future and the 100-plus employees who were going to lose their jobs when Derek's house of cards collapsed, this is actually a good thing. I'm the hero of this story, Clara. You just don't want to see it because it doesn't fit your narrative." She stood up, grabbing her laptop and her phone. "I need to go. I need to figure out how to salvage my reputation." "Good luck with that," I said. "Might want to start by not defending the guy who got fired for cause. Just a thought." She left without another word, the front door closing behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I heard her car start, the engine revving a little harder than necessary, and then she was gone. I sat there in the now quiet kitchen, my cereal getting soggy, my phone still lighting up with notifications. Zoe came downstairs, already dressed for school, and looked around the kitchen with the observational skills of someone who'd clearly heard at least part of that conversation. "Mom left early," she noted. "Yep." "You bought her company?" "Yep." "And fired her boss?" "That too." Zoe poured herself some orange juice and sat down across from me. "So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much trouble are you in?" I thought about it for a second. "With your mom? Probably an 11. with everyone else? I'm actually doing pretty okay. The company's going to be better off, the employees are going to keep their jobs, and Derek Harlow is going to have to find a new career that doesn't involve spending money he doesn't have. Cool, Zoe said, like I'd just told her about a mildly interesting movie I'd watched. Can you still drive me to school, or are you too busy being a corporate villain? I can drive you to school, I said, genuinely smiling for the first time that morning. I'm a very efficient corporate villain. I can multitask. Mason thundered down the stairs, dragging his backpack behind him like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Why was Mom yelling? Because Dad's having what they call a moment, Zoe explained. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine. Are you guys getting divorced? Mason asked with the blunt directness that only 9-year-olds can pull off. I looked at both my kids, sitting there at the breakfast table in our kitchen, and decided they deserved honesty. Probably, buddy. But that's not about you guys. That's about your mom and me figuring out that we want different things. You two are still the best things I ever made. Better than the corporate takeover? Zoe asked with a smirk. Way better, I confirmed. The corporate takeover is just a thing. You guys are people. People are more important than things. Even when the thing is revenge. Mason asked. Especially then, I said, grabbing my keys. Come on, let's get you to school before I get philosophical and start quoting Mr. Rogers or something. By Friday, Derek's corner office was emptier than a politician's promises, his ego shredded into pieces smaller than the confetti at my disaster birthday party. I know this because I'd made a point of walking through Silverline's executive floor that morning, partly for legitimate business reasons and partly because I'm petty enough to want to see the physical evidence of my victory. The office that had once housed Derek's collection of industry awards, his motivational posters about crushing it and disrupting the game, and what I'm pretty sure was a mirror he used to practice his TED Talk expressions, all of it was gone. Just empty shelves, bare walls, and a lingering scent of expensive cologne that would probably take weeks to air out. Patricia Chun, the new interim CEO who actually had a functional brain and a business degree that wasn't just for show, had wasted exactly 0 time implementing changes. She'd brought in an actual CFO, shocking concept, I know, to review the books, started renegotiating contracts that Derek had agreed to while apparently drunk on his own supply. And most importantly, she'd put Clara's entire department under what she called performance review, which was corporate speak for we're going to figure out who was actually working and who was just riding Derek's coattails. Clara, for her part, was in full damage control mode. She'd spent the week trying to distance herself from Derek faster than rats abandoning a sinking ship, which would have been more convincing if half the office hadn't known about their affair for months. Turns out, when you regularly leave the office together at 9 p.m. and come back smelling like the same wine bar, people notice. Who knew? I learned all of this from Jennifer, the executive assistant who'd escorted me to that first board meeting. She'd taken to sending me daily email updates with subject lines like Executive Floor Drama Report and Things You Should Probably Know, which was hilarious and also incredibly useful. Apparently, once you become the majority shareholder, people suddenly want to be your friend. Or at least they want you to remember they exist when promotion season rolls around. The media circus had calmed down slightly by midweek, mostly because some tech billionaire had gotten caught in a scandal involving cryptocurrency and a private island, which was apparently more interesting than my corporate takeover. But the industry gossip mill was still churning at full speed, and Clara was at the center of it whether she wanted to be or not. She'd tried damage control in the most Clara way possible, calling everyone she knew, posting carefully worded LinkedIn updates about excited for new leadership opportunities and embracing change, and generally attempting to rebrand herself as someone who'd totally seen this coming and was definitely not complicit in Derek's disaster of a management style. The problem was that sympathy was scarcer than common sense at a Flat Earth convention. Word had gotten out about the affair, not from me, for the record, because I didn't need to say anything when the entire office had apparently been taking bets on when someone would finally call them out on it. Some anonymous employee had even created a Slack channel called HR Violation Waiting to Happen that had like 40 members before IT shut it down. I was in my home office on Friday afternoon, reviewing some construction project bids and trying to decide if I wanted to bid on a new parking structure downtown, when I heard the front door slam hard enough to make the house shake. Clara was home early. This was becoming a pattern. She appeared in my office doorway looking like she'd been through a hurricane made of paperwork and judgment. Her hair was coming out of its bun again. Apparently, that was her new default state. And she had this wild-eyed expression that suggested she'd been having a very bad day. They put me on administrative review, she announced, not even bothering with hello or any other social pleasantries. Patricia called me into her office this morning and told me I'm under review for potential conflicts of interest and unprofessional conduct. I looked up from my laptop. And you're surprised by this because I didn't do anything wrong, she exploded. Derek and I were working on campaigns. We were collaborating. That's what people do in professional environments, Luke. Collaborating. I repeated slowly, like I was trying out a new word. Is that what we're calling it now? Because I'm pretty sure there's another word for what you were doing, and it's the one that gets people fired. Nothing physical happened, Clara said, but she said it in that way that meant something physical had definitely happened, or at least gotten close enough that the distinction didn't really matter. Clara, I genuinely don't care what happened between you and Derek at this point. What I care about is that you thought it was acceptable to conduct whatever that was while representing the company and being married to me. And now you're dealing with the consequences. Welcome to cause and effect. It's a fun concept. She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe like she needed the support. Everyone's treating me like I'm toxic. People I've worked with for years are avoiding me in the hallways. Amanda from Creative won't even make eye contact with me anymore. Again, I said, returning my attention to my laptop. Consequences. You want to know what's really wild? If you'd just been a normal level of unhappy in our marriage and asked for a divorce like an adult, none of this would have happened. But you decided to publicly humiliate me, carry on with your boss, and generally act like I was too stupid to ever figure it out or do anything about it. So here we are. You're enjoying this, she accused. I'm not enjoying it, I admitted. Look, Clara, I didn't put you under review. Patricia did, because she's actually competent and doesn't want a lawsuit. You want to be mad at someone? Be mad at Derek for being stupid enough to think sleeping with employees wouldn't catch up with him eventually. Or be mad at yourself for thinking there wouldn't be consequences. But don't stand in my office and act like I'm the villain here. Before she could respond, Zoe appeared in the hallway behind her. My daughter looked between us with an expression that suggested she'd heard at least part of this conversation and was filing it away for future therapy sessions. Dad? Zoe said, completely ignoring Clara. Mason wants to know if we can order pizza for dinner. The pizza reference made Clara actually flinch, which was satisfying in a way I probably shouldn't admit. Sure, I said. Not Tony's, though. Let's go with that place on Henderson Street. The one with the stuffed crust. Can we afford stuffed crust? Zoe asked with a completely straight face, and I realized my daughter had inherited my sarcasm gene at full strength. I think we'll manage, I said, matching her deadpan delivery. I got a pretty good quarterly dividend check this week. Clara made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. This is insane. My entire life is falling apart, and you're making pizza jokes with our daughter. Your life isn't falling apart, I corrected. Your life is restructuring, kind of like Silvaline. Painful, necessary, and ultimately for the best. You'll land on your feet, Clara. You're smart, you're talented when you're not busy backstabbing people, and Patricia actually said you do good work when you're focused. You just need to figure out who you are when you're not trying to impress Derek Harlow. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift in her expression. Not acceptance exactly, but maybe the beginning of understanding that this wasn't something she could smooth talk or network her way out of. I'm staying at my sister's for a while, she said quietly. I think we both need space. Probably a good idea, I agreed. The kids can stay here with me. You can see them whenever you want, obviously. I'm not trying to keep them from you, Clara. I'm just done pretending we're a functional couple. She nodded slowly, then looked at Zoe. Baby, I'm going to be staying at Aunt Michelle's for a bit, okay? But I'll call you every day, and we can do lunch this weekend if you want. Okay, Mom, Zoe said in that careful, neutral tone that kids use when they're trying not to take sides, but definitely have opinions. Clara left without another word. We heard her go upstairs, heard drawers opening and closing, and then 15 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase that suggested she was packing for more than just a weekend. She paused in the doorway, looked like she wanted to say something, and then just shook her head and left. The door closed behind her. The house settled into that particular kind of quiet that feels like relief. Mason appeared from wherever he'd been hiding, probably his room playing video games, and pretending he couldn't hear the adults having another argument. Did Mom leave? Yep, I said. Is she coming back? Eventually. Just not to live here. Not for a while, anyway. Okay, he said with the easy acceptance of a 9-year-old who'd probably been expecting this for weeks. Can we still get the stuffed crust pizza? Absolutely, I confirmed. That night, we ordered pizza. The good pizza, not the sad coupon pizza, and watched a Marvel movie marathon on the couch. The kids piled on either side of me, and somewhere during the second movie Mason fell asleep with his head on my shoulder, and Zoe was texting her friends with that focused intensity that 12-year-olds bring to social media. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Heard through the grapevine that Clara's under review at Silverline. You okay? I texted back. Better than okay. House is quieter. Kids are good. Pizza is excellent. Living your best divorced dad life already, I see. Not divorced yet, but we're getting there. Slowly and painfully, like all good endings. Want to grab drinks tomorrow? Celebrate your new life as a corporate overlord. Can't. Taking the kids to the science museum. Rain check. Look at you being all responsible and parental. I'm proud. Also mildly concerned about how well you're handling all this. Tommy, I spent 8 months planning a corporate takeover while my wife was having an affair. I'm handling everything exactly as well as that sentence suggests, which is to say, I'm coping through careful planning and moderate amounts of pettiness. That's my boy. Text me if you need anything. I set down my phone and looked at my kids. Zoe still scrolling through her phone, Mason drooling slightly on my shoulder, both of them safe and fed and relatively unbothered by the implosion of their parents' marriage. We'd get through this. We'd be fine. Better than fine, probably, once the dust settled and everyone figured out their new normal. The movie played on, something about superheroes saving the world through teamwork and strategic planning. I found myself half watching it and half thinking about Monday's meeting with Patricia, where we discussed the long-term restructuring plan for Silverline. My phone lit up with one more notification. An email from Jennifer with the subject line, "You'll want to see this." I opened it. She'd forwarded me a memo from Patricia to all staff, announcing organizational changes, new accountability measures, and a commitment to professional excellence and ethical conduct. At the bottom was a line that made me actually laugh out loud. Leadership transitions provide opportunities for growth and renewal. We look forward to building a stronger future together. Corporate speak for "the old guard is out, the new era is here, and if you were part of the problem, you should probably start looking for new jobs." I texted Jennifer back. Perfect. Thanks for keeping me in the loop. Anytime, boss. That's what executive assistants are for, keeping the boss informed and the coffee flowing. Not necessarily in that order. I smiled at my phone, then put it away and focused on the movie. Tomorrow I'd deal with lawyers and corporate restructuring and Clara's inevitable attempts to negotiate a divorce settlement that wouldn't bankrupt her. Tomorrow I'd figure out custody schedules and how to explain all this to Mason's teacher and whether I needed to hire a PR person to handle the lingering media attention. But tonight I was just a dad watching movies with his kids, eating pizza that cost more than $1, in a house that finally felt peaceful. Revenge was sweet, but this quiet, simple moment was even better. Clara finally came clean 2 weeks later, sitting across from me at our kitchen table like we were negotiating a business deal instead of dismantling 13 years of marriage. "I thought Derek would make me powerful," she admitted, staring at her coffee cup like it held all the answers. "Turns out, you were the power source all along." "Cute," I said, keeping my voice flat. "But this isn't a Hallmark redemption arc where you apologize and we magically fix everything with a montage and a pop song." She cried. Actually cried, which I hadn't seen her do in years. Apologized repeatedly, said she wanted to start over, used phrases like, "We can rebuild this," and "I made a mistake," like our marriage was a construction project that just needed new permits. I didn't yell, didn't throw things, or make dramatic speeches. I just looked at her and said what needed saying. "You left when I was at the table. You can't come back now that I own the restaurant." We finalized the divorce quietly. Lawyers, mediators, paperwork that turned love into line items. Clara moved into a small apartment near her sister's place. I stayed with the kids, rebuilding our life with more laughter, fewer insults, and absolutely no dollar off coupons. A year later, I walked into the same boardroom, this time as the keynote speaker at Silverline's annual leadership conference. The transformation was remarkable. Under Patricia's management and my strategic oversight, the company had pivoted from disaster to industry darling. Our eco-conscious campaigns won 3 national awards, client retention hit record highs, and we'd even started turning a profit. I launched a mentorship program called Second Chances for entrepreneurs rebuilding after betrayal or failure. It felt right, helping people who'd been underestimated find their footing. After my presentation, a young staffer approached nervously. "Mr. Hayes, you're an inspiration. What's your secret?" "Easy," I said, smiling. "Never underestimate the man with a cold pizza and a plan." That night, rummaging through old files, I found it, the crumpled pizza coupon. I laughed, actually laughed, and had it professionally framed. It now hangs in my office with a custom inscription underneath: "For a meal that matches your ambition and the appetite of a man you shouldn't have mocked." Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's becoming exactly who you were meant to be, $1 off coupon at a time.